Hello. Good afternoon. Good morning, everyone. Am I audible to you all? Hello. Am I audible? Okay. So in our last lecture, you might have studied about the forwarding and aggregation. Okay. We'll continue further with with the header format of IPv6. Okay, so that is also known as a IP, that is Internet Networking Protocol Next Generation. Sometimes they use the IPv6 term, or sometimes they use IPNG. That means Internet Networking Protocol for Next Generation. Fine. Uh, this IPv6, it is of 128 bits. The IP address, for example, in our IPv4, that is Internet Protocol version 4, in that we were using a 32-bit IP address, but now IPv6 uses 128 bits IP address. So what does it mean? Why it requires more number of bits? What was the shortcoming of IPv4? It was using 32 bits to provide the IP address for each of the system, isn't it? So why they have used this IPv6? They have introduced this one. Hello. What is the reason to introduce IPv6 instead of IPv4? That is a 32-bit. What was the problem with IPv4? Since it was addressing using 32 bits, and we have observed that at max we can have 2 raised to 32 number of connections, not even those many. Not infinite address. So we are having very lot, 2 raised to 30, 2 raised to 128 addresses can be provided. So that's why they have used this IPv6. Okay, fine. So we'll see that the format and how the addressing is carried out using this IPv6. So an IPv6 address is 128 bits long. Fine. Now, usually the notation of this IPv6, hope the screen is visible to you all. Okay. So, usually in IPv4, what we have studied, it uses the decimal notation, and within each between two different octets, a decimal point would be provided, isn't it? So, whereas in case of IPv6, it uses hexadecimal notation. Fine. So 16 bits chunk is used, and its corresponding hex notation would be used. And between two 16 bits, there would be a colon sign. As in IPv4, we use the dot, whereas here it uses this colon notation between two 16 bits. So this forms 16 bit, because as we know that each hex number would be of 4 bits, and here so it groups this 16 bits and its corresponding hex notation would be written. Okay, so between two 16 bits a colon sign would be placed. So you can see here, so this is the first 16 bit, the next 16 bits, and so on. Okay, so like this, its corresponding hex number, okay, it is grouped into 16 bits, and its corresponding hex number would be provided, and between two hex numbers, between two 16 bits, a colon sign would be provided. This is how the hex notation of this IPv6 address would be written. Fine. And we can shorten this. So here you can see that it is written 0074. So instead of 0074, they can write only this much, 74. That's all. Okay. And if you are having a consecutive zeros, if you are having consecutive zeros here, you can see that this is 16 zeros, here also 16 zeros, here also 16 zeros. So if it occurs, then only double colon should be written, and before this should be written, and after this part is can be written. So for example, you can see that if you are having these consecutive zeros, so instead of writing like this, it has to be written only double colon, and rest of this should be written as it is. Hope you have understood. So say here also once again it is this zeros occurs, but you cannot write double colon here. You cannot ignore this, and you cannot write double colon here and then FFF0. It is not possible. You cannot write like this. Only once you can write, if you are having consecutive zeros, only once you can write this double colon. Hope everyone is clear with this. Okay. So for example, say suppose if I'm having this particular address, IPv6 address, then how will you write it? So if it is 0, what does it indicate? Only one 0 is written. It indicates there are 4 zeros. Okay, then colon. How about this 15? So all these are the hex notations. Okay, so how will we write this 15? So this is one 4-bit hex number. This is the other 4-bit hex number. So it has to be written 0015. Hello, are you getting me? Now after this 0015, since we are having double colon, it means there are number of zeros in between this part as well as this part. Do you agree to this, all of you? Okay, there are consecutive zeros between this part as well as this part. So here I'll write the remaining part. So if it is 1, what you have to write? 0001. If it is 12, what I have to write? 0012. If it is 1213, since we are already having 4 hex numbers, so I'll write 1213. Okay. Now you can see that this is 16 bits. 16 2s are 32, 16 3s are 48, 16 4s are 64, 16 5s are 80. So 8 out of 128, 80 bits have already been shown here. How many bits are left? 48 bits. That means a chunk of, if I use this 48 bits, that means there are consecutive 48 bits which are all of zeros. So if I want to group it in 16, so it would be 0000 colon 0000 colon 0000. Okay, so this is my address in hex, the IPv6 address, which is represented in this manner. Actually, this is my address, and in short, it can also be represented in this manner. Any doubts in this? So this is your IPv6 address for this particular address which is given. Any doubts in this, all of you? If you have any doubts, you can let me know. Hello, is this thing clear, all of you? How you can write? Okay, fine. So this was about the 128-bit IP address. So next we'll see the header format of IPv6 datagram or IPv6 header. So here in this IPv6 header, we are having a fixed length 40-byte header. Okay, and that is also known as a base header. And as in case of IPv4, the fixed part was of 20 bytes. And what was the maximum size of the header in IPv4? 20 bytes was the minimum size. Okay. And what can be the maximum size of the IPv4 header? Any one of you? It was 60 bytes. Fine. So remaining 40 bytes were options, isn't it? Whereas here we are having a fixed size header, which each one is of 40 bytes. Okay. And the rest of the thing rest of this, after this base header, it provides this payload field. Okay, payload is nothing but your data. Fine. So in case if it wants to have some optional part, okay, so it can provide this extension header in this payload field itself, and this extension header would be there with this the data with the data. We can also have this extension header which can be the optional part. Okay, so now, and the maximum size of the payload field including this extension header, it can be of 64K, that is 65535 bytes. Fine. So now, in the IPv4, we have studied that by looking at this underlying network, based upon the size of the data which can be transferred through different networks like Ethernet or FDDI ring, etc., we have observed that the maximum transmission unit would be varying. Okay, and there the fragmentation has to be carried out by the routers through which the data has to be passed, isn't it? In IPv6, the fragmentation is not carried out by the routers. The fragmentation has to be carried out by the source itself. Okay, so since the source itself would fragment the data and then it would transfer to the routers, the router would not be able to fragment it. So that fragmentation part of IPv4 is not included in this base header of this IPv6. Are you getting my point? You know what is fragmentation? So if say suppose Ethernet is used and the maximum transmission unit through the cable, Ethernet cable, is only 1500 bytes. So each frame should be of only 1500 bytes. So even if you are having this many size of the data frame or data packet, it cannot be transmitted through this Ethernet. So for that, the router has to fragment this into smaller chunks so that it can transfer through this Ethernet. So that we have studied about that. So it is a function of the router to fragment these incoming packets so that it can cope up with this channel. Whereas here, in case of IPv6, the router is not the router would not be able to do this fragmentation part. So all this fragmentation should be carried out by the source itself. Okay, so the source itself would fragment the packets and then it can forward through the through the network. Got it? So since source itself would fragment, then as we know that we are having in the IPv4 header, the more fragment, then don't fragment, such bits are there, then fragment offset would be there. So all these things are not included in the header of this IPv6. Understood, all of you? Okay. The other thing, you can see that this is the IPv6 header, and you can observe that it is very simple than that of the IPv4 header. So the very first field is the version field. You know what is in the IPv4 also we had 4-bit version field, and here also we are having 4-bit version field. So since it is IPv6, the version field value would be 0110. That is to indicate that it is a IPv6 packet. The format of this version field would be 0110 to indicate that it is 6. Right? Then the next field is traffic class. Okay, so this traffic class, it is something like the priority field of the IPv4. So in this traffic class, what happens based upon the type of frames, or based upon the type of the datagram, okay, it has to provide the priority, or it has to provide which what is the priority of this particular packet, so that whether it whenever a congestion occurs, which packet has to be dropped from the network. So based upon that, we have this traffic class. Okay, then comes the flow label. So flow label is meant for providing the virtual circuit number. You know what is the virtual circuit? Okay, so flow label means what? for a particular packet, if it has to be routed through a particular routers, okay, and then for that particular group of packets, a number should be provided, which is known as a flow label. And for all the packets through the source for a particular flow, it should provide the unique number. Are you getting me? Say suppose I'm having some 100 packets, okay, and the unique number which is provided by the source would be 100. Say suppose 10. There are 100 packets and all of them are having the flow label name number 10. That means all these packets should have the flow label number 10. And when it passes through the routers, when these packets would pass through the routers with this particular flow label, they should be treated in the similar manner. Are you getting me? All these packets are belonging to the same, all these datagrams belonging to the same source, and they are having the same flow label. That means the amount of priority, the security, etc. All these things should be provided in the similar manner for all these packets of this particular data. So that is nothing but the flow label. So now the source has to provide this flow label. Say suppose the same source for different data apart from this, it cannot provide the same flow label. So it cannot provide the same flow label for the next data. Okay, so for that case, for such case, it has to change this flow label, showing that this particular set of data belongs to some other. This set of packets belong to some other data. Okay, so the flow label should be unique for a particular flow. And one more thing is that if say suppose the flow label should be random. It has to be decided by the source, and for all the datagrams it has to provide a unique flow number. Fine. Hope everyone is clear with this flow label. Hello, is this thing clear? Flow label. Shall I explain it once again? Am I audible? Okay, you need me to explain it once again. Abhi. Okay. See, if I'm having some data from say source 1, it is having some data and it is divided into number of frames or packets, you can say, or datagram, you can say. And for a particular data, the flow label should be unique. So all these packets should have the same flow label, say number 10. Okay. If it has some other data, some other data has to be sent to some other host, then it would have some other flow label. So here the flow label is provided so that all these data, all these packets from a particular data, say D1, so all of them should be treated in the similar manner. Are you getting this? The security, the authentication for all these packets should be same. The priorities should also be same for all these packets. For a particular flow label, it should be unique. Is this thing clear? Now, if it is changed, if the flow label is changed, then the priorities may also be changed. So the router which gets these packets, so it has to deal with all these packets with a particular flow label in a similar manner. Hope everyone is clear. Okay. The next field is a payload length. Payload length is nothing but it is of 64K, which we have discussed here. This is the payload, and it is given, it is up, the maximum size is up to 64K. Okay. So here it provides a payload length. Now there is one more field which is known as a next header field. This is something like the options field in the 80. sorry, in this IPv4. Okay. In this next header field, you can see that if in case if the packet is the transport layer which provides the packet is the TCP. Okay, TCP packet is there. In that case, the code would be equal to 6. So in this next header field, it would provide the code number 6. So what it, by looking at this, it can make out that the data packet is of TCP, and accordingly the header of the TCP would be provided with this after this source address as well as the destination address. Right. Similarly, you can see that apart from that, see this encryption, authentication, etc., that is not provided by the IPv4. So it does not provide any encryption or authentication. But by using this IPv6, it has provided this encryption as well as the authentication. Apart from that, it the one more thing what I wanted to say is that this flow label, it is also used for real time audio or video transmission. Okay, so that means whatever the data it is transmitting, since it is a real time, that means there should not be much delay between two different data packets, and hence the flow label for a particular audio stream or a video stream, it should be unique. Okay, so IPv6 provides this real time application. It can provide this real time audio or video data transfer, whereas IPv4 does not support this. Right. Then here also you can see that if the packet is UDP, that means if it is UDP means what? If it is connectionless, then it that type of packet is nothing but the user data UDP, and the next header field would be 17. So you can see here in the next header field, based upon the type of protocol which is used, it can provide this next header field. Follow? Then comes the hop limit. So, can you, which was the field in IPv4 based on this hop limit? Which was the field in IPv4? What is hop limit? Any one of you? Why do we include this hop limit? Hello. What do you mean by hop? The packet when it is moved from one router to the next router, which is neighboring to it. Okay, that is known as a hop. I mean, it is jumping. It is something like that. Okay, so hop limit means what? It is same as that of TTL field. What is that TTL field? That is time to live. So why it is used, time to live field? Hello, why this time to live field is used? After that time, discards the packet if it is not reached. Very good. Okay, so actually there also no doubt they have used this time to live. There also they are using the hop field. I mean, instead of time they are using again the hop. So it is hop limit. It implies that after how many hops this packet has to be discarded. So that limit is provided in this field. Now, usually the hop limit, what it provides, what the source provides is usually it would be twice of the number of routers which are coming between host H1 to host H2. Say suppose there are 5 routers which comes between host H1 to host H2. That means the hop limit would be equal to 10. Are you getting my point? So once this packet has means it has passed through 10 such times or 10 routers if it has passed, then this particular packet would be discarded. Okay, and at every hop, the router would decrement this particular field by 1. Okay. Now, in the IPv4, what we had even had the checksum field, and we have gone through how this checksum would be was calculated. But in this, since the higher layer, the transport layer is already performing this checksum operation, then there is no point in performing checksum at every router as well as at every host. So instead, the transport layer would take care of about this checksum. Okay, so that checksum is also avoided in this IPv6 header. So then we are having a source address as well as destination address. Each of them is of 128 bits. Understood all of you? The header part? Okay. So comparing the IPv4 and IPv6 packet headers, the header length field is eliminated. So in that, in IPv4, we had HLEN field. That is the header length field. So how many bits it would occupy? It was of 4 bits. And that should be multiplied with, this 4 bits would be multiplied with 5 to get the header length. Okay. Since the header length was of variable length, it requires this header length field. But here, in case of IPv6, the header length is fixed, that is of 40 bytes. So no need to have this header length field in IPv6. Followed? The header length field is eliminated in IPv6 because the length of the header is fixed in this version. That is of 40 bytes. Hope everyone is clear with this. The service type field is eliminated in IPv6. The priority and flow label fields together take over the function of the service type field. So we have already gone through the type of service field, in which we have discussed about the minimum delay, then throughput, then cost, then reliability. All these were the type of service field in the IPv4. But by using this priority field and the flow label field, so this service type is avoided or it is discarded in this IPv6 field. The total length field is eliminated in IPv6 and replaced by the payload length field. So in the IPv4, we had a total length field which contains the payload or the data as well as the header. It was a sum of these two. But in case of IPv6, it is only replaced with the payload length field. So it would also it would only provide the length of the payload in this, because however this header is of constant size, which is of 40 bytes. So it need not it only needs to provide this payload field, right? Then, as I said, the fragmentation, etc., it is carried out by the source itself. So no need to provide this part, the identification flag bit as well as the offset field. It is eliminated because those are also included in the fragmentation extension header. You can see that here also we are having this extension header, or in the next header, the fragmentation field is already provided. So no need to include this part explicitly into the header. And as I said, the fragmentation is carried out only at the source. Then the next field is TTL field, that is a time to live field, and that is replaced with the hop limit, which we have discussed. The protocol field is replaced by the next header field. As we have in IPv4, we are having one field of protocol where we used to provide which type of protocol we are using. But here that is replaced with the next header field, and that next header field is placed with the code of each of this protocol, which is used by the upper layer. Okay. Then the header checksum is eliminated because the checksum is provided by upper layer protocol. So as we know that the transport layer would also perform the checksum, even the data link layer would also perform the checksum. So no need to perform checksum at each and every layer. So they have they have removed this checksum field in this network layer. Okay, the option field is in IPv4 are implemented by the extension header in IPv6. So these are the comparison of IPv4 and IPv6 header. Any doubts in this? So you can see that the extension header are like this. So hop by hop option, it is something like pad 1. That means if it wants to pad 1 byte of data, then it use this extension header like hop by hop option. Whereas if it wants to pad more than 1 byte, so the extension header would be, this hop by hop option would have this padded. Now, in case if the size of the datagram is more than 64 kilobyte, okay, then it could also provide this jumbo payload. Okay, then in IPv4 also we are having a strict source routing, uh, then record route, etc., or loose source routing, etc. So all these can be carried out here also in the similar way, like source routing. So this is the another extension header. Then fragmentation. So if the offset value, etc., of the fragmentation, it is not provided directly into the base header, but by using this extension header, they can perform this fragmentation. But this fragmentation is not done by the routers, but it is done by the source itself. Then these two fields are not included. They were not there in the IPv4, that is authentication as well as the encryption. So those were not done. And the last one is the last extension is the extension header is a destination option. Okay. So these are the various extension header types which is provided in this IPv6. Follow? So comparison between IPv4 options and IPv6 extension headers. So the no operation and end of option field in IPv4, it is replaced by pad1 and padn. So this is just for just to pad so that the word size. Okay, so that would be, just to what we say. I'm not getting the word. I don't know why. Okay. Padding means what? If say suppose if usually this would be the size of 32. Here we are having a size of 32 bits, isn't it? If say suppose after some option, if you don't, if it the word size is not of 32 bits, then the padding would be carried out. So here pad 1 and pad n are the example. Then the record route option. So in our last in IPv4 we have the record route option. That means when the packet would move from one router to the other router, to check the working of the routers, or to check whether it is working properly or not, while the packet is moving through these routers, it has to provide this record route option. That means each router would provide their own IP address saying that this packet has passed through my particular router. Okay, and that is not implemented in IPv6. Follow? Then the timestamp option is not implemented because it was not used. The timestamp. So apart from the record route option of which has to provide their own IP address by each of the router, it should also provide the timestamp at what time that particular packet has reached to me. Okay, and so it has to provide the timestamp for that. But since it was not utilized, they have dropped this one also. The source route option is called the source route extension header. So here some extension header is there, which is the source route option is provided with the source route extension header in IPv6. The fragmentation field in the base header section of IPv4. So as we have seen that we can perform the fragmentation in IPv4. They have moved this fragmentation extension. This fragmentation is moved to the extension header in IPv6. Then the authentication extension header is new in IPv6 and the encrypted. So these two fields are most important and they are newly added to in this IPv6. The authentication and the encryption of the payload field is provided in this. Okay. So this is about the IPv6 header and it's working. Hope everyone is clear with this. Hello. Any doubts in this? So this is about the IPv4 comparison of this IPv4 and IPv6. If you have any doubts, let me know. So, or we can move to the next topic. If you have any doubts, let me know. Is it clear? Am I audible? Okay. Hopefully everyone is clear with this. So, till now, we have studied about how each packet can be addressed. Okay. And now we will see and what are the function of the routers also we have discussed, but still we'll dive deeper into that and we'll see what are the various issues at the network layer and how it can be eliminated. At the network layer, the design issues would have the store and forward packet switching. So we'll see what it is. So what do you mean by store and forward? Say suppose if I'm having a host H1 and host H2. So host H2 is connected through a LAN to this particular router. We have studied about NAT, Network Address Translator, in which there might be number of hosts which are connected through a say suppose through the underlying cable or through the network, and there would be a router which is connected to the external world. Okay. So say suppose F is a router at this particular LAN and it may connect to some subnet. So here the meaning of subnet is nothing but the routers as well as this communication link. Sometimes they use the term as carrier equipment, or they can also use the term as subnet, which indicates the router. So all these A, B, C, etc., whatever you are observing, these are the routers, as well as all these routers are connected through this communication links. Okay, this forms the routers as well as this communication links forms the subnet. So don't confuse. I mean, this subnet is different than the subnet what we have learned, like dividing that network ID into number of subnets. That is different, and this one is different. Okay, but they use the term as subnet even for this. Now, say suppose host H1 wants to host H1 is directly connected to this router A of this particular subnet, whereas host H2 is connected through this router F to this particular subnet. Fine. So some process P1 of this host H1 wants to send some message to the process P2 of the host H2. Okay. So what it has to do, it will forward that particular data or the packet to the host A, which is directly connected to this. Now, what is the function of host A? The entire packet it receives, it would compute the checksum, and then it would forward it to the next router. Is this thing clear? So again, when it reaches this packet 1 reaches to the router C, what it has to do? When the entire packet it receives, compute the checksum. If there is no error, then forward the packet to the next router. Follow? So this is nothing but store and forward. So it has to first wait till the entire packet is received. It stores into the buffer. Then it computes the checksum. If it is everything is fine, then it would forward it to the next router. So this is nothing but store and forward packet switching. Hope you have understood this. Store means what? Till the entire packet is not received, it has to store it into the buffer, and then it has to forward it to the next router. Okay. So this is nothing but the store and forward type of packet switching. Now, what are the other services provided by the network layer to the transport layer? So the next function of the network layer is to provide the service to the transport layer. What do you mean by this? Okay, so services should be independent of the router technology. So whatever be the routers, whatever be the type of routers you are using, the uh, transport layer should be independent of that. Are you getting this? Okay, so since we are using the layered uh, model, the operation which is performed by one layer, it should be transparent to the upper layer or to the lower layer. Okay, that is the meaning of layering this. Okay, so that all of them can perform independently their own task. So here the services should be independent of router technology. Whatever be the type of router you are using, whatever technology you are using, it should be independent. The transport layer should be shielded from number, type, topology of routers. So transport layer should not know whether that particular packet is moving from 4 routers or 2 routers or 1 router. So it should be independent of that. Then it should also be independent of the topology of routers. That means how these routers are interconnected to each other. The transport layer is least bothered about that. Okay. Are you able to make out? So it is the function of the network layer to find out, to make out, to check the topology, to check whether the packets have been routed properly, to update the routing tables. So all these are the function of the network layer. Okay, but the transport layer is least bothered about all these functions. It just wants that the process P1 by the host H1 should the data which is transmitted to the process P2 of H2. It is only concerned with this end to end delivery. Hope you are getting me. Okay, it is not bothered about how many routers these packets have been moved. It is not bothered about what type of router technology is used, how many numbers are what are the number of routers it has used, etc. So the transport layer is shielded from this all these, or it is not bothered about all these things. Okay, and then and the third point is the network addresses available to the transport layer should use uniform numbering plan. Okay, that means the IP addresses whatever is used, it should be uniform. Okay, so these are the various services which is provided by the network layer to the transport layer. Fine. It should be independent of router technology. It should be shielded from the number type, etc. of the topology of the routers, and the numbering network addresses which is provided. It should be uniform to the transport layer. So these are the services which is provided by the network layer to the transport layer. Now we'll see about how this implementation of this connectionless service. So we have already studied about the connectionless and the connection oriented service. Okay, say suppose in our example, in this particular case it is showing connectionless service. What does it mean? Connectionless service means what do you mean by connection oriented and connectionless service? Connectionless service means what? The packets are routed independently, does not require connection. Yes. Okay. Uh, in case of connection oriented, all the packets should follow a particular path or a particular connection, we say. Whereas in case of connectionless service, it is not required. For example, say suppose host H1 is having some process P1 and it has 4 different packets, say 1, 2, 3, 4. In case of connectionless service, each of these packets can be independently routed. It is not necessary that it has to pass through a uh, same path. Okay, for providing this, okay, to provide the packets towards the destination, it requires a table which is known as a routing table. So, for example, so this is a A's routing table. Fine. This is a router A and its routing table is there. And these are the number of routers which are in its subnet, say A, B, C, D, E, F. So for routing this packet from H1 to H2, from A to A, initially it would be dash because there would not be any route, or means it would be dash. If it wants to reach to B, it should be, because it is directly connected. So B can be reached with this, C can be reached directly. So this is the destination and through which it can pass. So that is shown here. So C is the destination, C can be reached through C itself. Now the next router is D. Okay, so D can be reached through B. So you can see that the next hop where it can transfer the packet, if it wants to reach to D, it has to be passed through B. Similarly, if it wants to forward this packet to E, then it has to be passed through C. Similarly, if it wants to forward to the router F, then it has to be passed through C. This is what the um, routing table of A is there. Okay. Later, when as we want to pass the packet through host H2, which is connected to the router F, and according to this table, so all the packets should be routed through this particular C. To reach to F, it has to be passed through C. So you can see that 1 has been passed, 2 has been passed, 3 has been passed. So while it is passing these packets, it has learned that since all these packets are passing through the same route, it has learned that there is a congestion, means there is a traffic only in this path. So what it will do, again, it would, after some time, it would again find out the traffic in each of these paths, and accordingly it would make some modification. For example, again now here, to reach F, instead of to reach through C, now it has changed its path from B instead of C. Hope you have understood this. Since there is a lot of traffic on this path, it has now it is routing this packet number 4, say, which has to be destined to host H2 through F. Then it has changed its routing table that this now to reach F, to reach to this F, it has to move through B instead of C. Okay. Hope everyone is clear. So all these packets can be routed independently to the host H2. Similarly, this is a C table and E's table. All these are the routing table. Okay. And periodically, the routing table has to be modified based upon the congestion or the traffic within the network, or it might be possible that some host or some router might have gone down, or some new router has been emerged, or it has been connected to this. So based upon this, the this routing table should be would be modified. Is this thing clear, everyone? Hello, any doubts in this? Now, the next one is connection oriented service. Okay. So as we know that in case of connection oriented service, before transmitting the packets, the resources have been already allocated. So you can see that H1 wants to transfer some packet to host H2, and it is divided into number of data packets like 1, 2, 3, 4. And since it is using a connection oriented service, a particular path has been established, and this path would have a number which is known as a virtual circuit number. It is known as a virtual circuit number. So host H1 what it will do, it will provide this virtual circuit number 1, and in the ACE table it has this uh, virtual circuit number. So H1 through H1, virtual circuit number 1 is established, and what are the packets which occurs through H1 with the virtual circuit number 1. So this virtual circuit number is provided by the host H1 itself. So any packets which are arriving through host H1 with the virtual circuit number 1, it has to be passed through the router C, whose virtual circuit number should be 1. Are you getting this? Even C would have the table that the virtual circuit number which is provided by A with 1. Now it has to be forwarded to the virtual circuit to the host to the router E with the virtual circuit number 1. Now each table would also have this virtual circuit number and the router through which it is getting, and to whom it has to be forwarded, and its corresponding virtual circuit number. So the a path has been established. So all you can see that 1, 2, 3, 4, all of them following the same path, and they'll have the resources would be allocated, and that for each of them it will be provided a virtual circuit number, or you can say that virtual circuit identifier. Fine. Now say suppose H3 also wants to send some packet to host H2. Okay. So for this router A, H3 is again, say suppose using virtual circuit number 1. But host A knows, router A knows that this is achieved through, it is getting through H3, and it is not same as that of H1. So what it will do, while inputting, it is getting this, the source, that is H3 and its corresponding virtual circuit number. But while it is outputting to, through this link from A to C, so what it is doing, it is changing its virtual circuit number from 1 to 2 to indicate that it is not from host H1, but now it is from some other host. Is this thing clear? Similarly, here also, this in as well as out table would be there, which would maintain the virtual circuit number and its corresponding source as well as the destination. Or that means from where it is getting this packet and to whom it has to forward this packet. Okay, so this is nothing but the connection oriented service. So say suppose in case if any one of the router has gone down, then it would not be able to forward this packet towards the destination, because this virtual circuit would be lost. Fine. So if I compare these two, virtual circuit and the datagram subnet, you see, connection-less service is also known as a datagram, whereas connection-oriented is known as virtual circuit. Hope you are getting this, all of you. Any doubts in this? Hello. So if I compare these two, the very first one is circuit setup. So as we all are aware, the datagram subnet need not require any circuit setup, but the virtual circuit has to be established between the two hosts in this virtual circuit, or you can say connection oriented service. The addressing. See, since in the datagram, every packet is routed independently, so it requires a full source as well as a destination address. Whereas the packet which follows this connection oriented service, it should have a short virtual circuit number. That's all. That means the packet should contain the virtual circuit number. It need not have the entire source and destination. Only the first packet may have the source and destination, whereas the rest of the packets which are following through the same path with the same virtual circuit number, then they need not have any other information. Okay. Then state information. So routers do not hold any state information about the connections, whereas every router, here we have studied that every router should have the state information. That means any packet with host 3 should be forwarded to host router C with this particular virtual number. So that state information should be maintained in case of virtual circuit. Each virtual circuit requires router table space for connection, whereas here it is not required. Okay. Then routing, each packet is routed independently, whereas route chosen when virtual circuit is set up. All packets should follow it. Fine. So it has to choose the route before the virtual circuit would be set up. So here such this table should be maintained before actually virtual circuit is carried out, and then all the packets should follow that particular route. Okay. And effect of router failure. So what happens if in the case of virtual circuit, if the one of the router fails, then all the packets would be lost, whereas only the packets which are for through that particular route or which that particular router has, only that packet would be lost, whereas the rest of the packet would be reached to the destination. Okay. Then the next is quality of service. It is very difficult to find out the quality of service, whereas here it is easy if enough resources can be allocated in advance. So if say suppose if enough space in the router table is maintained, enough bandwidth is already allocated. If such thing is already available, then we can find out the quality of service more easily. And congestion control is difficult in case of datagram subnet, whereas there would it is a very less chance of congestion in this, because already the resources would be allocated in well in advance before actual data transmission is carried out. Okay, so these are the some uh, comparison of the connection oriented service as well as connectionless service. So as I said, connection oriented, it is also known as a virtual circuit, and whenever there are connectionless, we use this term as datagram circuits. So where you have found this virtual circuit in your previous lectures? Any example which uses this virtual circuit? Hello. Have we used this ATM in which we had virtual circuit identifier? Do you remember? And the IP, it uses the datagram circuits. Okay, it is datagram, whereas the ATM, it uses the one such example is ATM, which uses this virtual circuits. Okay, so in the next lecture we'll go through the routing algorithms. We'll stop here and we'll continue in the next lecture. If you have any doubts, let me know. Any doubts in any of the topics whichever is taught to you? Okay then.